Welcome back, Streamer Nation. I'm your host, Michael Simeone, and you're listening to the SP Streamer Podcast, part of the Fantrax and FantraxHQ.com family. Joined, as always, by my favorite Fantrax writer, Miss Lauren Auerbach. What's going on, Lauren?
Hi, Michael. I am well. I have to say that I have recently been enjoying the Twitterverse because did you know that you, my friend, are now a meme, or as Bryce Harper once called it, a meme? Well, now you know.
I love that you are the only person to do that live. I haven't even done that live.
There you go. There you go.
Wow.
I've been enjoying it. How does it feel? You've got all these people that are doing this, and I think it's great. I think it's pretty cool. I like it.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I did not expect it. A lot of really good ones out there too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have to say I'm pretty happy with it. But we do have a special guest for today. He writes for SP Streamer. He's the founding father of our hitter projections and is the co-host of the Saint Victory podcast. And that is none other than Josh St. Marie. What's up, Josh?
What's up? I just have to jump in on this Did You Know talk. I think you're starting to become known for something else here. You know, you were known for streaming pitchers, but now I think like half my Twitter feed, which is usually all football these days, is these videos of people copying you.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's good, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
great. Publicity, right? Yeah. So on today's podcast, we're going to talk about weekly projections. Josh's weekly projections, breaking down hitters, and then we're going to kind of go through NFBC ADP a little bit. Josh, I do have to ask you a question though. I don't know if I've brought this up to you before. Do you remember when you applied to SP Streamer and how we did like a live video chat for like a quick little interview?
Yes, I actually do remember that. I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember.
Do you remember what you were wearing?
No, I'm very nervous.
Because I think if my memory is right, I think it was you. And I don't know if you were going somewhere or it was on purpose. And I feel like I brought this up to you before, but you were in a suit.
No chance.
No?
I probably was in, if I was in something nice, there's no way it was a suit because I have one suit and I hate it. At least at that time I had one suit and I hate it. It could have been in a dress shirt and a tie, and it
maybe that's
before work.
Okay, that's probably what it was. But when I finished talking to you, I was like, I don't know if he did that because he was talking to me, but it made me like you more.
Okay, there you go.
It made you stand out. All right, so we're first going to talk about Josh's weekly projections. So basically throughout the entire season last year, Josh was our streaming hitter guy, I guess you could say, and expert, I guess you could say. And he basically, I guess, created projections every week to figure out who would be the best streaming options for hitters. This upcoming season, he's going to basically just be doing projections, and we're going to have it up on our website and all that good stuff. So you could see, on a weekly basis, who looks like they should perform really well. So to start off, Josh, how did your weekly projections perform throughout the season when it came to picking streamers?
So for their purposes, I would say they did really well. Now, I never test them in the way maybe you would test a traditional set of projections where let's say you have people projected to hit between 295 and 305. You look at all those players and you see, they hit on average 300. So you had a very good projection. I did not do that because my projections were built for the specific purpose of streaming hitters. So what I looked for in my projections was outliers, very strong outliers, say someone who looked like in any given week looked like they were going to perform super well in any given category. And so for that purpose, they did really well. So if you'll entertain me here, I'll go through the numbers of how my streamers did. So though I'm comparing them to what a league average hitter did in 2021, and I broke it down by the 6 categories that we used. So the first number I'll read is that league average number. The second is my streamers for that specific category. So if I'm talking about batting average, those are my batting average streamers. And then I'll also share the number for every week I would pick a group of hitters that I'd say, if you're just looking for overall production or in a points league, this is a hitter I would go with. So that's the third number. So starting with batting average, the league average this season was 244. My batting average streamers hit 302, probably the strongest performance I had in any category.
Nice.
For those streamers that I suggested for overall, they hit 260, so still way above league average. On base percentage, the league average was 317. My on base streamers got on base at a 353 clip, while my overall streamers got on base at a 330 clip. Slugging percentage, league average this season was 411. This actually might be a category I did better than batting average. My slugging percentage streamers had a 484 slug, and my overall streamers had a 470 slug. For home runs, an average hitter this year hit about 0.82 home runs on any given week. My streamers hit over 1.02 home runs every week, whereas my overall streamers hit 0.94. Okay, now these last two categories are where it gets a little iffy. This is where I struggled a little bit. So that's RBIs and runs. So for RBI, the league average was 2.91. I did, by the end of the season, figure it out and got above 2.91. So they ended up having 3.27 RBI. So it was really strong second half of the year. For the first half of the season, I was below that mark. And my overall streamers were also above the mark by the end of the year, 3.08. Now, runs, I did not hit league average, which was 3.06. My run streamers, for whatever reason, were down at 2.88. Whereas my overall streamers were actually above my run streamers. They were at 2.98, so just below league average.
I remember every week in every article you were like, I need to figure out this runs crap because this is not working.
Well, runs is so tricky. So like for RBI, you can stream someone who's going to hit home runs. He hits 1 3-run home run and he's above average. You can only get one run on any given play. So it's really tricky.
So how do you think it's going to translate for all players for like next year?
Yeah, I'm really curious. I think I'll probably tweak some things because, as I said, everything last year was about identifying outliers. So I may have to curtail the projections a little bit. So if it spits out someone's going to hit 400, I may dock off a point or two by hand. No, I'll mess with the equations, make sure they look reasonable, and I'm excited to see how they compare to actual, like how they actually performed instead of just identifying the streamers.
Have you tested them against any others? Like, I know Razzball does it weekly. I don't know if anywhere else does, actually.
I have not tested them against any others. I think that's because I viewed mine I thought they kind of were projections for their own purpose. Like, again, they were really built just to identify hitters who you would want to stream.
Got it.
And no one really else, I would say, that I'm aware of uses projections in that way, but this year it will be much more important for me to compare them against some of the more well-known projection systems.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a quick question. I was gonna say I have a quick question. And it's not on the show sheet, so you don't have to get in depth or anything, but I have heard you talk about your projections before, and obviously they are data driven, and you've gone on record saying there's no such thing as a hot or cold streak, and I just wanted to see if you could address that real quickly, just because I do think that a lot of fantasy managers, they utilize hot and cold streaks and depend on those, I think, in terms of like, are they going to pick up a player off the waiver wire? Are they going to stream them? And I think that's always, or I think it's in a lot of minds of fantasy managers. And so I just wanted to see what kind of your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so I should probably be a little more careful with my language. I will never say like a hitter isn't hot at any given moment or isn't cold at any given moment. What I will say and what I will caveat is I believe, and I believe the data backs this up as well, it's impossible to predict when that cold or hot streak will end. So you can look at a period and say, yes, this batter is hot right now. They're performing for whatever reason very well. But if you're going to go pick up a player on the waivers because they just had a killer week, there is no actual statistical evidence to say that is a good approach. It is just as likely for them to then go on a subsequent cold streak as it is for them to continue that hot streak.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. All right. All right. Let's talk a little bit about breaking down actual hitters. Just wanted to kind of ask you a few questions on this and get your thoughts. So what are some statistics people use where maybe they shouldn't when it comes to like looking at a hitter and, I guess trying to figure out if they're good or not?
Yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to answer this question with another question. I
Oh,
wanted to
great.
ask you, are you familiar with what a false dichotomy is?
Maybe no.
Maybe.
I definitely have heard the term, and I've definitely like used. I don't know. Go on.
If you've heard the term, it's probably because I mentioned it, because I love the term false dichotomy. But I went to a strange high school. I had a weird educational background where we learned rhetoric and specifically logical fallacies. Well, false dichotomy is one of those logical fallacies. It basically means someone presents a situation as if there are only two options, when in fact there are more than just those two options. Okay. So a good example would be, you can either get married or live alone the rest of your life. That's a clear false dichotomy, because there are more options than getting married or being lonely. Mm-hmm. You can live with friends, family, girlfriends, boyfriends, you name it. So that's a clear false dichotomy. Now, this isn't exactly a false dichotomy, but I think an example in the baseball world that tracks pretty well with what I'm talking about here is actually home splits versus away splits when it comes to hitting. So I'll explain it like this. I'm going to ask a series of questions again. So how many different ballparks are in the MLB?
30.
30. Okay. And how many are any of those two ballparks the same?
No.
Okay. So how many of said differing ballparks are included in a player's home splits?
How many different? One.
Yep, one. Now, how many of said differing ballparks are included in a player's away splits?
I mean, it depends how many other teams they play.
It does, but it's way more than one, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you see kind of the natural problem here when you're grouping it into home games versus away games? Mm-hmm. So the problem
I feel like home games, though, you kind of have a validity to it.
Yeah. So home games are totally valid, but you can get more specific and more accurate than just grouping something into an away game. And that's where something like park factors come into handy. Now, a number of sites have park factors. I like to use the park factors on EV Analytics. But basically, when you're looking at away splits for a hitter, you're looking at how he would perform in a league average park. But say someone is going to Coors Field, obviously, naturally, you would understand his offensive production is likely going to increase, even if his away stats historically are worse than his home stats, because say he's a Diamondback hitter, another very offensive friendly park. So it's important to differentiate between the two. Specifically, when you are looking to stream hitters, you want to look at the specific ballparks they're going to be playing in, because it really doesn't matter what a player looks like in any given away ballpark. It's that specific week, which ballparks will he be in? Are they home run friendly? Are they batting average friendly? That's the actual information that's important to know.
All right. What's something that people don't use enough?
I would say, so this is probably a very strange answer. I think I've been known to give strange answers on this show, but
we know, Josh, we know.
I'm going to actually go with two things. I don't know if there's really like a metric for it, but something worth tracking. And I think roster resource is a great tool for this, but playing time and where they're hitting in the batting order, being up to date with how often a player is playing. And if they're moving up in the order is extremely important. Teams know when something is clicked for a player, when something mechanically is changed for the good. They know that way before we do. We can think we're the smartest people in the world, but teams are smarter. They know what they're doing with their players. So an example last year is Kike Hernandez. We saw all spring training. He was hitting leadoff for the Red Sox. They start the season. He's an everyday player hitting leadoff for the Red Sox. They clearly like him. So getting those at bats, getting the stamp of approval from Alex Cora, who's a pretty decent manager, a little biased, but pretty decent manager. That's something that I think is really important and really underutilized as far as analyzing hitters. It's something really simple that anyone can look at.
Yep. All right. In terms of power metrics, what do you think are like the best power metrics to look at?
I think without a doubt, I'm factoring in a little bit the ease of finding this metric, but barrel percentage, which you can find on Fangraphs,
Anywhere.
and they're stacking. Yeah, you can find it pretty much anywhere, but it's not a hard metric to find. Specifically, I'm looking at barrels divided by batted ball events. That seems to be the most correlated to home runs. So I'll just real quick, I just want to read through kind of the actual technical definition of a barrel so you can really understand why this is really correlated to hitting home runs. So a barrel is defined as a well-struck ball where the combination of exit velocity and launch angle generally lead to a minimum 500 batting average and a 1,500 slugging percentage. I believe I cut off the definition. So, but I'm pretty sure that's what the word is going to be. But the important thing to know about here is it's not just a ball that's hit above X miles per hour and at X launch angle. It's actually something that moves. So, for example, a ball that's hit 98 miles per hour is a barrel if it's between 26 degrees and 30 degrees.
Mhm.
But if it's hit harder than that, the actual launch angle expands. So if it's hit above 100 miles an hour, that expands from in between 24 degrees and 33 degrees. And then the last thing I'll add there is, although the definition is it needs to be at least 500 batting average, 1,500 slugging percentage, it's actually much higher than that. In reality, when we look at barreled balls, it's way closer to about 800 batting average and a slugging percentage of 3,000, which is basically just below a home run. So basically balls that are getting barreled are going for, on average, 3 bases. It's either going to be a home run or a double, basically.
Have you looked at Alex Chamberlain's blast percentage at all?
I have looked at those a little bit. I am not convinced those correlate any better to home runs, and I think they're kind of less accessible now. You really all you have to do is go to his like public Tableau thing, but Tableau can be a little slow and a little chunky, but those do a pretty good job of maybe quickly identifying. I don't even know how to put it. I just think it's a lot of unnecessary noise. It's like getting slightly more specific when you really all you need is barrels, tells you almost the exact same information. It's just much quicker and easier.
So you like a barrels per batted ball event over barrels per PA?
I do, because someone like Joey Gallo, for example, just like loves to strike out and walk. That's really going to mess with if you look at his plate appearances and not just at his batted ball events.
Got it. All right. And last part for statistics wise. So what are your thoughts on expected stats? A lot of people obviously seem to misuse it. And I know there's a good amount of talk about it on Twitter, I think a couple months ago. Because a lot of people think, oh, this hitter's expected batting average was better than their batting average, so next year they're going to have a better batting average, when it's not necessarily true. It's obviously meant to be descriptive, not predictive. Yes, it could be used as evidence for other things you see. So I just wanted to kind of get your overall thoughts on it.
Yeah, this is such a complicated question to answer, but on a base level, I would say I'm not a fan of expected stats. Probably because mostly of how they're used. People seem to know that, even like people always use the example of one of the creators of these expected stats everyone sees on Baseball Savant, Tom Tango. He himself has said they're supposed to be descriptive stats and not predictive. If they were predictive, we would have built them differently. But people seem to like to use that as evidence. I've been guilty of using expected stats as evidence because I know that's what convinces people. So I think in that way, I play into the problem a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely do then.
But what I'll say is, so this is like how MLB defines expected batting average, which I think is really misleading. So they said expected batting average is more indicative of a player's skill than regular batting average, as XBA removes defense from the equation. Hitters and likewise pitchers are able to influence exit velocity and launch angle, but have no control over what happens to a batted ball once it's put into play. So if you're like trying to Google what is expected batting average and you see that, I think it's very easy to come to the conclusion, oh, I can use this to identify hitters that are going to have better future performance. And the one thing I'll say about that is I actually completely disagree with the fact that it removes defense from the equation, or at least disagree that that's a strength of expected stats. I think by far the biggest weakness of expected stats is they do not take into account the direction the ball is hit. Now, I understand people saying hitters don't necessarily have control over where the ball's hit, the pitcher does, but a good hitter will be sitting there in an 0-0 count or until basically they get behind, and they can look at the defense and say, okay, they're giving me left field. I'm going to wait, if I'm a lefty, for an outside pitch, if I'm a righty, for an inside pitch. That's absolutely a skill that every single major leaguer has. And so to ignore defensive positioning by just completely eliminating the direction a ball is hit is a huge blemish, I think, on expected stats, and is why you see some crazy expected stat numbers when you see someone like bloop a single into left and it comes up as like 0.2, and you're like, that no one will ever make that play. How is that 0.2 expected batting average?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I also say I do love using expected stats to tell people that my team is getting unlucky. So, like, for example, when the Red Sox were playing the Rays, the game that Hunter Renfroe kneed the ball over the fence, and we ended up winning in that very controversial manner, the Red Sox expected batting average was twice as high as the Rays that game. And so the whole game I was saying, it doesn't matter. The Red Sox should have won the whole game anyway. They were getting unlucky, knowing fully well that it probably had to do more with the direction they were hitting the ball and the Rays' great defense and the Red Sox bad defense, but whatever. They have their use.
Josh uses things when he needs to.
Exactly.
Josh only uses things when it benefits him. Otherwise,
exactly.
Otherwise they don't matter. All right, so we're gonna go through some NFBC ADP. We did this in our last episode with Mike and Victor, and I just kind of like, going through different parts of it, trying to find, I guess some perceived value, because that's what everyone likes to look at, right? They like to find players that they think should be, can outperform where people are taking them. So for Group 1, this is basically this is all ADP based off DCs, and we're going to be around the 100 pick range here. So in Group 1, we have Cody Bellinger at 96, Carlos Correa at 97, Jonathan India at 99, Alex Bregman at 100, Christian Yelich at 102, and Giancarlo Stanton at 103. So Josh, give me your thoughts. Who do you think has some perceived value in this grouping?
So first, I just want to apologize for probably how repetitive my logic may seem as we go through this. I have a very mathematical approach with how I look at everything. And so when I find a logic that works for me, that's what I'm going to roll with. You guys also will be picking who you like from these groups, right? It's not
we're going to talk. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I got some questions.
Okay. So, basically my general approach to all of this is I've been working on like a master rankings for players. And so I have a value score based off of projections. And then I'm taking so if I look at the 5 categories, I'm trying to explain this as best I can. A player that is only providing value because of stolen bases, I am not a fan of drafting those type of players. A player that's only hitting home runs, etc. So I also have a score for basically how consistent their value is across all 5 categories. And then I'm combining those two. So an overall value score, a consistency, or if we're being more technical, a deviation or variance score, to create an ultimate metric. So just to put some names that are coming up really high in this metric in general. So Kyle Tucker is actually the highest person I have. He's a 5 category contributor and projects well in all 5 categories. Luis Robert actually comes second. Now I wouldn't draft however you say his last name. Yeah, health risk. Number 3 is my guy wearing his jersey, Bo Bichette, which I just have to mention. I was on the show. They asked me who is your sleeper pick for the year, and I said this is last year. I said second rounder Bo Bichette, and everyone laughed. Second rounder.
You did. I remember that.
I don't know if you know this, but Razzball's player rater had Bo Bichette as the second most valuable player in all of fantasy last year. So I'd like to say second round Bo Bichette was a sleeper last year. So just had to throw that out there.
Hey-o.
Anyways,
Josh
all that
throwing
to
shade.
say, in this category, I think by far the most valuable player is Giancarlo Stanton. But I would select Christian Yelich because
Mm.
Christian Yelich is the only player here, except maybe Jonathan India, who I see as a 5-category contributor. And so when I look at this score I've created, looking at his value and his how well his value spread out amongst the 5 categories, I think that Christian Yelich is the right choice.
Wow. So you think?
Oh yeah.
Go on, Lauren.
Oh no, I was gonna say I do think that's interesting because I think that he could also I could get him. I think he could be dropping, because I think people could be scared of Yelich, and if there are injury issues, even though he said that his back issues were not a problem in his second half kind of struggles, last season. And I could see people kind of going off of that. I think he has a lot of upside there that if he does kind of bounce back and he kind of changes his approach because his launching angle dipped like severely last season. If he can figure that out, I think that he could like totally go up the list. He'll be, really valuable.
I'm just surprised at the Yelich pick because there's a lot of variance there.
Well, there is, yeah.
You gotta be afraid of that floor, Josh. No.
Well, what do you mean by variance? Because I think from a production standpoint, he's going to give you home runs, RBI, stolen bases. I think he's one of 2 guys in this category, the only 2 that can give you stolen bases, him and India.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I'm just afraid that we continue to see the same Yelich that we've seen. I think he has the most obviously the biggest upside here, but I also think he's the lowest floor.
So here's how I'll put it then. So I look at Stanton and just again from a value standpoint, I think that's the guy I would take if I'm just trying to maximize value. I'm ignoring things going wrong basically. If I'm just trying to make an optimal team, I would probably draft Stanton here. But Stanton gets injured, you're going to have to replace home runs on your team. That's for sure. And if your team went another direction from what you were expecting, and you can already afford to lose home runs, or you're already lacking in other categories, picking someone like Stanton who has injury problems once he gets injured, that's going to be extremely problematic. Mm-hmm. Whereas someone like Yelich, who isn't necessarily giving you a lot in any one category, but his value is spread out amongst many, if that pitch doesn't pan out, or if Yelich does get injured, he's much easier to replace because then you can adapt to the form your team actually took. If it turned out you have more stolen bases than you were expecting, or you had more batting average than you were expecting, you can look for a guy that's a home run hitter. Or if the opposite is true, you can look for someone who steals bases to replace Yelich. So that's why I like picking players that have value spread across many categories.
Makes a ton of sense. What are your feelings on Bellinger this year?
Well, I had a controversial article last year for you saying I would not draft Bellinger. I don't remember if it was in the second round. It might have been.
I was so out on him too. Yeah, I was not touching him.
And my argument really wasn't even anything that necessarily happened. Well, it did happen, but I was saying he has more batting order risk than people realize because when things aren't going well for him, the Dodgers very willingly drop him in the batting order, which hurts a ton when it comes to fantasy value, specifically counting stats. He's getting less at-bats. He has less good hitters around him. And so he gets injured. He's struggling. They hit him low in the order all year. I am not convinced Bellinger is a good player. Even beyond that. So he's actually the person I would draft last in this category.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Totally agree. All right. Well, all 3 of us agree on that at least. All right. Let's go to the next grouping.
Whoa, who are you guys taking? You're not taking Yelich. That's not an answer. You got to pick someone.
I'm with you on India.
I'm India.
Okay. I'm totally cool with India.
Okay.
All right. Second grouping. We're in like the 140, 150 range here. Willie Adames, 140. Cabrian Hayes, 143. Gurriel Jr., 144. Dylan Carlson, 145. And Yoan Moncada, 147. Who you got here, Josh? Who do you like?
Yeah, so these guys I have actually all graded very similarly. I have them all between my 94th and 133rd overall hitter. So I guess it's kind of whatever you're really looking for at this point. I think personally, for me, that would be Willie Adames. I think he spreads out the value again the most. Yes. And I think that even if you're looking at projections, which already like Adames, they might not even be fully factoring in how different of a player he is, not having to hit in the Trop
in Tampa
every single game. So I think projections are underselling just how good Willie Adames can be. So I think there's extra added value in that regard as well.
I am going to be boring. I absolutely agree with that. And I will say, just to kind of pivot and just I think the guy that to me is kind of the shakiest in this is Moncada. He's someone that I've never been kind of a Moncada kind of fan, just because I don't know exactly what I'm getting, and I think that he's kind of been going off of name value a little bit, and so I don't know. But again, I think that he does have a little bit of upside, but I don't know that are we really going to see kind of double digit power and speed, which I think was kind of his main thing, and I'm just not sure that you will. So I agree with you with Willy Adames, and then just pointing out, I think the guy in this section that I'm like least, I think he's the shakiest here.
I do want to mention Hayes here too. I was listening to another podcast. I want to say it was Launch Angle, but I could be wrong there. But I didn't know. So he had hand issues last year, and missed time. But I didn't know. Apparently, he has had hand issues all throughout his minor leagues career, kind of as well. So I actually did not know that until I listened to the podcast, because I kind of liked Hayes. So for those who don't know, I don't know if that's common knowledge or not, but I think it's just something to note with him, because obviously he's a guy who you want running, and if they're afraid of him hurting his hand, he could be running less, and that could certainly hurt his value.
That's a super good point. I think. I was going to say, I think people overlook how important hands are to stealing bases, because everyone slides head first now.
Absolutely. I mean, I know they have the guards now or whatnot, but still, or the glove, whatever you want to call it. And I'm also with you on Moncada, Lauren, because I mean, we're really just relying on one season right now with him, and we're just hoping that it's going to come back. And until we see it again, I don't think you could really bank on that, unfortunately. All right. Third grouping. This is in about the 190 range. You got Nelson Cruz at 199, Colton Wong at 193, Eduardo Escobar at 196, which will probably shift now that he went to the Mets. Soler at 197 and Andrew Benintendi at 198. I have a feeling Josh is going to go with Colton Wong here, but who do you have, Josh?
I'm actually not going to go with Colton Wong. I think too much of his value is stolen bases. So I actually think this is a rare instance when the person in this group happens to be the most pure value pick here, and also isn't docked too much for how his stats are spread. Now, he doesn't provide you with one category at all, that being stolen bases. I'm actually going to go with Nelson Cruz.
He's so hard for me. So here's my question for you. Are you someone who typically doesn't mind taking a, DH, utility spot only, or like, does that bother you or not? Basically, that's what I'm trying to ask you.
I think it obviously bothers me a little bit, because you always want to have that flexibility. But from my experience, people way overvalue just how valuable position flexibility is. So, for example, Michael, we were in a league together with the members of our Discord where I ended up getting JD Martinez and Shohei Ohtani, who I could only hit in DH spots, and still at both picks, because they fell so far because no one wanted them because of their position eligibility. JD Martinez ended up getting outfield eligibility midway through the season, and I just slotted Shohei in my DH and my UT spot all season, and I kind of dominated that league, I would say. I barely had to make any waiver moves the whole year, and it's because no one wanted Shohei Ohtani or JD Martinez. So, I think, yes, you have to be mindful of it, but if it gets to a point where Nelson Cruz is at the top of your rankings for a couple of rounds, I mean, you take him. It's getting ridiculous at that point if people are just ignoring it because of his positions or his age, I think.
Gotcha. Who do you like here, Lauren?
I like Colton Wong. I like that. I think that he's got a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. He has an average, above average K rate. He leads off, so I think he's a nice source of
ton of runs.
So, and I think that runs are, I think a lot of fantasy managers don't account for runs. It's like this lost stat, but it's very important. And so, he's leading off for a solid team. I go with Wong.
Lauren, do you know the secret to runs? Because I don't. I can't get it right. Tell me.
I do.
Yeah, we all know Josh can't figure this out. So
I think, it's the top of that order. I think that's identify those guys, right?
Yeah,
is it more complex than that?
No, I think that's literally the answer. I was making it too complex. It's like, are they hitting in the top third?
Yeah.
Then they're scoring
That's
runs.
it. There you go.
Yep.
And do they get on base?
Yeah.
Right,
That's yes.
All right. Fourth group, and we're hitting the 250 range here. Is Kyle Lewis at 254, O'Neal Cruz at 255, Abraham Toro at 256, and Miguel Sano at 257. Before we get your answer here, Josh, is anyone going to be in on Sano with him losing weight?
I don't know if that's like a specific reason people wouldn't be into Sano. Even if he maintained his weight, I don't think I would be into Sano, to be perfectly honest. So I guess no, if that's just another reason not to
You're gonna say no?
I get it. All right, Josh, who you liking here?
So part of me, and I'm being biased here. I'm in a 30-team dynasty league. I inherited this team. It's a crazy league. We've had 150 trades on the nose since the offseason started. Armchair baseball league. If you ever see it, it's absolute blast. If you have an opportunity to join, I highly recommend it. But I happen to have one of these players on that team, Abraham Toro. So everything about me wants to figure out a reason to pick this guy, but I just can't do it. And so I don't know. Like I want to say he's in a similar position to Adames where he starts getting everyday playing time and his stats tick up. But honestly, I'm not completely convinced. And so for that reason, I think I'll leave Toro here and actually end up going O'Neal Cruz.
Okay. I was going to roll with Toro, but it was mainly just because I'm not a fan of the rest of them. And yeah, I mean, if he started getting, like you said, more playing time, top of the lineup, good organization to be a part of too, in terms of development. So I think he's got a little upside there. What do you think, Laura?
Do you think they would platoon him though? Like I feel
that's kind of what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's the only problem. But it's hard to tell right now.
I feel like a really dicey group of guys, but I would say kind of, I would go with Cruz as well. I think, I'm not sure, what, his playing time will be. I'm not sure that he's really starting the season with Pittsburgh, but I do think that, he's got immense upside. And I think if you are in a dynasty league, you obviously already, roster this guy. And so I think but in redraft, I don't know. I still think that Pittsburgh will likely let him play once he's up, and they want to see what he has, and he's got plus power and speed as well as batting average, presumably. So I don't know. I mean, there's still kind of diciness there, but to me he's like the least dicey and has the most upside in this tier.
All right, moving on to the last group.
Actually, Michael, before we move on, sorry to keep doing this. I just wanted to point out, because I have been keeping a close eye on Toro, so I'm a little worried that the Mariners keep seemingly looking for players to fill the positions he's been playing for them. So he's been playing a lot of second base for them. They go out and inquire a middle infielder. So now they're like, oh, we're going to move him to third. And now the Mariners are being linked to third baseman in free agency. So I don't know what's going on there. If they want to move him to the outfield, I've seen a few rumors of that when it comes to Toro, but a player that's moving around like that makes me very nervous about just how they're going to be able to handle it from an offensive standpoint.
I wonder if it could be a little bit more of a depth thing too, though, because they really don't have any, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess, you could be right. I guess we got to really see what they do.
But it could also be, I have also seen reports that I think they were going to try him out in the outfield in spring training. And is it one of those things where they actually do value him, and they're trying to squeeze him in a spot? Or is it, because I could see
they
like
acquired him, so clearly I think they see something in him, we'll see what happens there. All right, fifth grouping. I don't even know why I group these guys together, because this is a super boring, horrible group right here. We're in the 300 range. JP Crawford at 310, Brandon Marsh at 315, Adam Frazier at 316, and David Fletcher at 317. Is there anyone here you like at all, Josh?
No. I think I'd probably go with David Fletcher, though.
Okay. I kind of would lean I think I would lean Crawford here, because he's going to play. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think he does have some speed to him. Where Fletcher's a little more empty, I think. Like, it's just literally one category.
Mhm.
I actually have Fletcher stealing double digit stolen bases and JP Crawford only stealing 8. So I think that Fletcher gives you both the best stolen base chances and batting average chances of these guys, which are two things that are very hard to come by at this point in the draft. So
Right. I mean, yeah.
I'm not
I
I'm
guess
really
you're
not
right.
that
No, you
sold
could
on
be
it,
right.
but
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
my thinking.
I mean, they all kind of stink here. What about you, Lauren? Do you like anyone here?
I'll go with a third option here. I'll go with Frazier. You know, I think
Okay.
I know he doesn't strike out a ton. He had a 368 OBP last season, so he should be batting near the top of the order. So again, you can get some of those runs. He's not really going to give you, there's not a lot of power there. He doesn't hit the ball hard, but he could give you, some late round steals. I don't know. How many steals do you have him projected for, Josh?
Sorry, let me go back real quick. I think 9. Yeah, 9 right now.
All right.
Well, he had 10 last year, so.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what I was saying with that grouping. It must have been late at night or something. My brain was hurting me or something. So that was a terrible grouping to even discuss it all. All right. So that does it for this podcast. Josh, next time I have you on, I want you to be in a full tuxedo. Okay.
If I had one, I would. I'll do whatever you tell me to.
All right, real quick, just so we could get it on record, Josh, who's going to win Survivor?
It's going to be Erica. It's going to shock a lot of people. They keep trying to tell us she's a good player. I don't necessarily see it on camera, but when everyone keeps saying it, I think that they kind of want to trick us. So
you think production's trying to? I gotcha. Okay, yeah. All right.
You should come up with a projection thing for Survivor. Come up with some categories.
Well, me and Josh are in a fantasy Survivor league.
Oh, okay.
Let's run on Twitter. Yeah,
I actually
both, fighting for first. I mean, we're in separate leagues because there's like a bunch of them. Yeah, we're both fighting for first in our respective leagues.
Okay.
I had a bad week this week. One of my players went home, but I actually have a tweet where I took a Survivor scenario, put it in a spreadsheet, and actually got liked by one of the players on the season. So I'm basically already
there you go. I like it. It's the next step. I like it.
I love when you do stuff like that, Josh. I don't know why. I find it so funny. Yeah, it's amazing. I wish I could be like that. All right. Well, it was great having you on. For those listening, you can follow Josh on Twitter at UTStreamer. You can follow Lauren on Twitter at LK Auerbach, and you can follow me on Twitter at SPStreamer. Please rate and review if you like our podcast. Check out our website, spstreamer.com. Our draft kit is up for pre-order, and we are actually hiring some new writers because we're going to be putting out a lot more content next year. Well, yeah, still next year, which will be really exciting. So look out for all of that. And that about does it, guys. Thank you for watching or listening, and we will see you next week.